I don't remember anyone telling me that freedom had to be fought for and defended. It just seemed to always be understood. I love my country, and I love being free. There is no greater love in the world than a man laying down his life for someone else. But a man thinks different when it's his boy going into harm's way.
I'm Maddie. Your dad and my dad were best friends. What is that?
It's a Medal of Honor. What did my dad die for, Bob? He gave his life for his country. What are you doing?
It's not that easy, kid.
I think Chris is right. We should all be doing something.
Well, I'm tired of not standing up for what I believe in. Our freedoms are being taken away from us one by one. Well, that's how we're taking them back. One at a time.
Guys, we can't get scared and chicken out. We're all in this together.
Our rights are being destroyed, perhaps forever. Will history say you stood by and you did nothing? We fight for freedom! We fight for freedom!
We can make this all go away.
You can't buy my silence, you can't steal my voice, you can't keep me quiet. I will bring the noise. Try to beat me down, tell me to shut my mouth, but there's a time to speak, and the time is now. You can't buy my silence, you can't steal my voice, you can't keep me quiet. I'm gonna bring the noise. Try to beat me down, tell me to shut my mouth, but there's a time to speak, and the time is now.
We are lied to from cradle to grave.
How the hell do we have a man in the White House who's used at least 2 different aliases and several phony social security numbers?
God is angry. His people are going to rise. They're going to take care of business. These politicians, they can get on the right side of these people, the lions of this country.
This is not a government. These are terrorists. Get the hell away from our children!
You got to be realistic. Who can make war with this beast? Our government is arming the enemy to kill us. God is going to win the fight.
You're being extracted and exterminated.
And God did say, do not fear the destruction of the wicked when it comes.
I'll have a bag of chips, and I'll throw a nice party for all my friends. We're going to have a Scooby-Doo ending.
Welcome to PNN Talk Radio, Patriot News Network, hosted the American Voice at patriotsride.org. And here is your host. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Countermand Report with Charles Kacprowicz. And here is your host.
Good evening, folks. This is Charles Kacprowicz. I am the Executive Director for Citizen Initiatives and the Countermand Amendment. I will be your host tonight for the Countermand Amendment Report, and we have a very special program tonight. We are broadcasting on our flagship station, PNN Talk Radio, at pnntalkradio.com. Call, email, and text your friends and associates. Let them know that there's a very special program tonight with 3 special guests, including Zeta Andrews, Susan Price, who is a Gold Star mother, having lost her son in Afghanistan, and also Jim Larkin, who is the director and founder of History Institute. And I have so many things that are going through my mind right now, I can hardly I can hardly keep myself from falling off this chair. I've had great difficulty trying to organize tonight's presentation, but I'm going to do my best. I'm going to ask my guests if they will just kind of take the pieces as they feel is needed and contribute that part of this show that needs to be discussed, because the matters that we're going to be talking about are very serious. I do believe that this is probably the most urgent and important show that I have had the privilege to host, and we will be trying to take the full 2 hours to report on government activities that are now approaching crisis proportions. Recently, Governor Greg Abbott from Texas issued a directive to the National Guard in Texas entitled Governor Abbott Directs Texas State Guard to Monitor Operation Jade, Helm 15. We're going to be discussing that Jade, Helm 15 tonight, that operation that is part of the Pentagon's program for the Western states, and Susan Price and Jim and even Zita will be having part in that. You have to hear what we are going to be presenting because it's serious. This is not just some idle chatter to fill in some airtime. This is very, very serious. You will also learn why the Countermand Amendment is needed now more than ever, and why citizen initiatives is pressing state legislators and governors to get this amendment ratified ASAP. The three guests that we have is Susan Price, a Gold Star mother, Susan's son, Aaron Kenefick, a U.S. Marine Corps sergeant, at age 30 was killed in Afghanistan in a reported ambush with some very questionable surroundings. Two are the owner of PNN Talk Radio and host of American Voice, Zita Andrews, will be talking to us about issues that relate to Jade Helm, but also some issues that she has concern for. And then as James Larkin, let me rephrase myself. James Larkin is the founder and director of History Institute, and he's an investigative reporter covering the federal government. He can also be participating. I have a key scripture that I want to share with the audience before I turn this over to Zita Andrews, and that is this. In Psalm 71:18. Now when I'm old and gray-headed, O God, forsake me not, until I have showed thy strength unto this generation, and thy power to everyone that is to come. Folks, if we don't show God's strength to this generation will be lost and unable to understand the importance and the very special role that America has had as being a God-fearing nation for the last 200 plus years. We have a problem today in America like I've never seen before, and we need to address it head on. Thank God we do have Article 5 and we do have the Countermand Amendment. So there are some solutions that will be possible for us to pursue in the days ahead, and tonight we will try to discuss some of those things. Now, for the purpose of carrying this first segment forward, I would like Zita to come into the conversation and tell us what's on her mind.
Well, hello, Charles, and hello, everybody out there listening tonight to this broadcast. It is a very important broadcast, and before we get into the nuts and bolts of Jade Helm 15 and what it is and what it does, I would like to announce that we started a page called Patriot Certified, which stands for Community Emergency Response Team in the Field Initiatives Enforcing Defense. And that's what this core group is going to be doing. This core group will travel nationwide throughout America. We plan to leave no later than 2 weeks, possibly sooner. It's that dire. Talking to governors of each state to call and set up an emergency town hall meeting, which we will attend, as well as others, to stop or push back Jade Helm 15 as Governor Abbott did in Texas. The following discussions will be aimed at ensuing. Each state is fully informed on Operation Jade Helm to the citizenry. This is a call for governors to call a meeting with legislators to activate the State Guard, to monitor operations concerning Jade Helm 15 for public safety. The main goal is, our main goal is a Countermand convention that will start this in process of the states to convene a convention. That is really our main hope here, to stop the usurpation of treaties, which the TTP, that's what it is, a treaty. We have the economic collapse this September that is scheduled. And, if you're not making preparations for gold, silver, or other avenues, you're going to totally lose 10 cents to the dollar. It's the biggest robbery that will ever be, on the American people, the world, not just the American people. This has to do with the world. So these town hall meetings will be set up prior to our leaving. This is a call for every American citizen to get engaged in saving the Republic. These governors will provide regular updates. This is their job. We, as the people, we have to get them engaged to be engaged. They're not going to do it automatically. So this is about public safety. This is about posse comitatus. This has to do with a lot of things. Now, we will get more into the nuts and bolts of Jade Helm after our other guests are introduced and they have their say in this. I would like to call everybody to get engaged and help us with this effort. I know that I don't like to ask for money, but if you can make even a small donation, it would help. We do have others in California that is contributing pretty significantly. This is important. You're going to lose your money this September anyway, unless you buy silver and gold. So let's put our money into pushing back this usurpation that is happening to the people. A lot of people are not engaged, do not even know what is happening. We also have intelligence that has come in, more activity on movements of equipment, military equipment, and I know that Susan, she has more information on that as well. So that is my take in this for now, and let's go ahead and bring on Susan Price, gold medal mom, and she is a very active patriot, and I'm proud to call her my friend. Hello, Susan. How you doing?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Well, are you still there, girl?
Yes.
Okay. Well, give us your take on the Jade Helm before we bring in Jim.
Well, Zita, as you know, we are in a state of emergency. We are in a red alert zone, and I would say that 99% of Americans have no clue. And not to be an alarmist and to stay focused and stay calm, but what's coming will be worse than 9/11. I know it's hard to imagine because we live in the great United States, but there is another agenda out there unfolding. Our intelligence reports, and we have about probably a handful or so of very reliable deep intel sources. They're all confirming the same thing, and every day there's more action. There's more movement of troops, United Nations troops, and actually, what's going on is against the American people, against us, and this administration's using treaties to acquire their agenda. What did you want me to start with first? There's just so much.
I know there is. But there's one good thing that I can state here. There are 26 states that's suing Obama for immigration action. So this is going to help our efforts, people, a little bit.
Yeah.
It will, because everybody the citizenry is really pushing. So we have to push a little bit harder. But these 10 states, which includes Florida, I live in Florida. And this is the number one state that we are starting with because most of the core group are here in Florida. And we're going to start with that. And
Susan, let me interject something here for a moment. I'm kind of getting my breath now. I started this program out feeling unglued, honestly. I felt, I wasn't pulling it together. However, I want to tell you, I did see your video on 60 Minutes, which you appeared in. I watched it very carefully. I was moved by the issues that Myers, the Congressional Medal of Honor winner, had presented, the multiple appeals that went out for support that your son was asking, and also for the 5 heroic efforts on the part of Myers in trying to rescue your son and 3 others in this town in Afghanistan, and then not getting any help from us because they were rejected probably 4 or 5 times. But at any rate, I watched it. It was moving. I realized how this has got to hurt you. I am impressed with your character. I'm impressed with your ability to carry on, and even for your desire to continue work in helping to restore this country and this Constitution in a way that is honorable to the Lord and honorable to men who have sacrificed so much like your son. I just want to thank you for that, for your sacrifice and for your continued effort. And I'm honored to have you on the program tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Charles. And, we have to, we're all Americans and we have families, children, grandchildren, and we want to preserve that. We want to preserve our American way of life and our legacy. So I appreciate.
Thank you, Susan. And I very much, I mean this, I very much am grateful that you have become my friend. But let me add a couple of quick thoughts here to kind of move the process forward. The Jade Helm 15 operation, which you know a great deal about, and has to do with military maneuvers in the western states. It alarmed Texas. As a matter of fact, let me read to you something that had to do with Texas concern. Yes, this was in the Boston. Eric Kane for the Boston Globe wrote. He wrote this: in a sign of the deep distrust that has emerged in conservative parts of our country, on this day in this town, and the town is Bastrop, Texas, 30 miles east of Austin, anger and concern poured out about a large-scale U.S. military training exercise to be conducted in Texas and throughout the Southwest. Rumors stoked on the internet and conservative talk spread fears that the troops and the Humvees that will roll over Bastrop this summer are part of a plot by the Obama administration to declare martial law in Texas. Now, the reason I read that is because there are many in Texas who were looking at some nefarious motive on the part of the government with regard to these operations. I simply can't think of any legitimate reason why they would have this large-scale operation in the western states. It doesn't even make any sense to me. And if they were legitimate, then why don't they announce them as such? Why is it all so hidden? And that's a big concern to me. But there are some adjuncts to this that disturb me even more. You know, John Kerry just this week made the declaration that the internet needed to have controls on it under international law. And by implication, he's referring to the UN. Now, Obama, back in 2014, refused to renew the contract between the Commerce Department and ICANN, that group that actually controls the domains registrations of the internet, which is an American-based operation. And so it has to be renewed by the government. Well, it's not being renewed. He wants to relinquish this to the UN. He wants to take the authority that America has had for the internet, which in fact we created, and he wants to turn it over to the UN. And so I'm looking at that in itself as a nefarious thing that is really something alarming. What better way could the American people find themselves subject to the dictates of a tyrannical government than not to have communications between each other and between the states? And the internet controls literally all kinds of communications. There is obviously cell phones, there's text, there's telephone calls that you make from your home. Much of that goes over the internet. The internet is a way in which people can get together, like your group, and communicate on issues that may not be so favorable to the government. They can control that. And so I see some connection here that troubles me, and I don't like it. I don't like what Kerry said. I don't like the implication that comes from Obama not renewing this ICANN agreement with his Commerce Department, and I think something is afoot, and we need to be addressing it. I do believe that the Countermand Amendment can do that. But Susan, make what comments you'd like on that, please.
Well, you're exactly right, Charles. And Zita and I have worked on this from the very beginning that we've heard of Jade Helm, and doing some research and digging and monitoring everything closely. I have found through my research in the last 5.5 years documents and the very people that are involved with these nefarious acts. And they're within our government that have worked these very high-profile positions in the revolving door, the military-industrial complex, and the political arenas. And there is no just cause why they would be doing these things to Americans other than to go against us. So, Zita, would you care to elaborate any further?
Yes. The number one biggest reason is this. When the economy collapses this September, they're going to have a major problem. So all this equipment is in place. This is a PSYOP within a PSYOP before the actual military rolls out. And in that, it is mastering the human domain, and that is what Helm, Jade Helm means. And how they master the human domain is through technology, is through your cell phone, is through all the communications. So they can have this mapping, which is with Raytheon BB, a government agency, through research and development, and they can have everything mapped out according to you. They have all the data on each and every individual in the world, not just the United States, and they know how to map out your next move before you make it, according to your communications. So this is the PSYOP part of it. Now, when people lose their pensions and their retirement, and there's no food on their EMT card, and they lose their life savings, they're going to have a major problem. This is when the military will actually roll out for civil unrest. And it is to protect their agenda and not the citizens of the United States. Because I know if I lost everything, I would be quite upset and I would be ready to hit the streets and protest. This is why you see the military movement across the nation, not just the 10 states. It is nationwide. And the human domain is the biggest concern for me because it has a lot to do with your cell phone. It is one of the weapons that is used against us for information. So with that being, yes.
Zita, let me add some thoughts to your comments.
Go ahead.
6 years ago, Colonel Oliver North had released a copy of the directive issued by Secretary Napolitano from the Department of Homeland Security. She just secured the office of Secretary. The department was just before that recently created. And she releases a directive, it's about 20 pages, and in it she tells the law enforcement agencies in America. This is official, folks. I want you to hear what 6 years ago they were already thinking this way. And she tells the law enforcement agencies, both the local agencies, the county and the state and the federal agencies, to be aware of the possibility that pro-lifers could likely be terrorists, that veterans are likely to be terrorists, and that Second Amendment advocates are likely to be terrorists. Now that's the warning that the Obama administration sent across the land in order to make people like me suspect to accusations that they're making. I am offended by that. When I presented that document to my church, which was 6 years ago, they didn't want to hear it. And I was rejected for even bringing it to their attention. Now here we are 6 years later, and we're talking about things like Jade Helm's 15, we're talking about getting rid of the internet, we're talking about executive orders that legalize 5 million illegal immigrants, and I do want to say something about that too, folks, but the fact is, there are so many things going on now, I can't keep up with it. I don't have the ability to kind of get my arms around it. All I know, it's not good.
That's their intention.
And I know this, that this Constitution is under attack because these guys are New World Order people. They want to have an international government through the UN that will actually govern the nations. If you remember, and I sent this out on one of my posts, that last year the Obama administration was approving a treaty through the UN, and I guess there were well over 100 nations signed on to it, and it was a treaty to govern the way in which arms would be sold between nations. And he wanted the Senate to ratify it. Well, the fact is, it would alter our Second Amendment. It would hinder what rights we have in the Second Amendment. And so this treaty then went to the Senate, and the Senate did what? They approved it. They literally approved it. But what they didn't do is reach 2/3, which our Constitution requires 2/3 of the Senate to ratify treaties.
That's right.
And so the treaty is not effective right now over America. But they are trying to get it done. They are trying at this very hour. This is not idle chat. Something nuts is going on, and we've been watching it for years, and all of a sudden with Susan's presentation, Zita's insight, other things that are going on around us in our personal lives, we see something going on that doesn't smell right. And I want you to know, folks, the answer that is in the hands of the American citizen is the Article 5 single-issue Countermand Amendment. Because with it, we can take every executive order, we can take every Helm, Jade Helm 15 directive, we can take any issue that is burdensome, onerous, damaging to the states and their citizens, we can countermand it and rescind it. Executive orders that legalize 5 million immigrants and probably 20 million by the time it's all done, that can be rescinded by the states with the Countermand Amendment. And so, on the one hand, we are presenting things in a way that is to share how alarming these events are around us. But on the other hand, we want you to understand we have an answer. The Countermand Amendment will remedy these problems if we just get it ratified ASAP. And when Zita was mentioning earlier that we are already planning to contact the governors in the 50 states, she is correct. I will be very much part of that and making personal presentations to the governors. But also we'll be working with state legislators in those states. And there will be a multiple effort, there will be a two-pronged effort in each state for the purpose of getting this amendment approved and adopted in the 2016 legislative session. So this is an active process that gives us hope, and if you want to be part of it, I don't go around with hat in hand. Folks, I just tell you, I don't beg for anything. I'd rather live in a cardboard box than to beg somebody even for a living quarters. But I will tell you this, I am offering you with my people my directives, I am offering you an opportunity to be part of constitutional history in America like has never taken place since the Constitutional Convention. We can restore our republic, but it has to be through state legislatures who created the federal government. The federal government didn't create the states, and they retained for themselves sovereignty to do just this in Article 5 for future generations of legislators. So on the one hand, the show tonight is to show how serious the matters are that are swirling around us, but it also is to show you that we have hope.
Yes.
So go to countermands.us, countermands.us, make your donation. We would love to have your contribution. It'll help us with our expenses. We don't have a salary. We don't ask for salaries. Everybody on this staff is volunteering.
Or you could go to the bottom of this page. There is a donation button there as well. And we do have the solution, people. We just need help to get it out there. Listen, we have the core group that's willing to take their time and sacrifice. And we may sacrifice our lives as well when it comes down to it. We don't know. But we are all willing. We are putting it all on the line, and we are taking off and going with it, and it will work. We have to do something. What is the price for your freedom? You have to ask yourself that. Are you going to stand by and do nothing when there was a solution presented to you? This is where we at today. We are in the last hour, but that can be a very significant hour to restoring the republic.
Thank you, Zita. And the fact is, it is the last hour, and we are that close. But it's not just for us. It's for our children and grandchildren. We want them to have a constitution that protects their inalienable rights and allows America to be a nation of excellence rather than just another nation among the nations. You realize that America has always been looked up to by the nations for values because of our Christian heritage, our righteousness that was in those Christian heritage. Always they looked to us with admiration. Didn't matter if they were Hindu nations or nations out of South America or Africa, even parts of Europe. The fact remains, America has been admired by the nations of the world. And then our Constitution has been the document that many of these nations modeled. They modeled it because we have in it inalienable rights given to us by God. Remember, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness? But there are other rights that are protected and codified in this Constitution. And I'm going to tell you, these left, progressive, socialist, all disguised Marxists, they don't like that. They don't like the idea that God gave us something that has value, that has been good to the nations of the world and to Americans, and they are working tirelessly to turn it upside down. And they do it by changing the meaning of words. You've heard the terminology, the Constitution is a living document. Well, Ginsburg on the Supreme Court believes that, and the liberals on the Supreme Court believe that. They don't believe in inalienable rights that are fixed, given by God that no one should change. They don't believe that. If they would, they wouldn't be for abortion. Abortion is that declaration that a woman can make a choice. Forget about the fact that it's the father's child. Forget about the fact that it's America's heritage. Forget about the fact that generations upon generations will be destroyed with each abortion. They just want to define murder as choice. And then they brainwash our people, especially our women, to think that that's acceptable. And that's what's happening to our Constitution. They are molding our Constitution into a way of thinking that is alien to our founders, and they would turn over in their graves if they knew what we are doing today. 50 million babies dead. I was just hearing today that an appellate court has overturned a decision with regard to, or not overturned, but has ruled in a decision that disallows the executive order for legalizing those 5 million illegal immigrants. Now, that sounds good on the surface. That really does. But it's not. You know why? Well, first of all, it can be overturned by the Supreme Court if they take it up. But the real problem is the court can't force the president to do anything. The court can't make the president has all the power. The president has the military. The president has the Department of Justice, the FBI, all of the agencies. all of the snoop groups that he has, the CIA. He has the power over all of them. And all the court can do is say, you know, that's illegal or unconstitutional. But the president can say, I didn't hear what you said. What do you mean unconstitutional? Define that for me. And he'll come up with some other scenario that will explain why what he is doing, in order to get the Hispanic vote, what he is doing is acceptable. And before we get back to Susan, kind of get ready here. I'd like to hear more from you in a moment. But before we get back to that, I want you to think about this executive order for these illegal immigrants. Why did he do that? And I'm going to be as straightforward as I possibly can be. The Democratic Party in America is in trouble. They are in trouble because 73% of America is still white. And the Democratic Party chose in the 60s to begin a policy and a strategy that would adopt into its core group voting blocks that would be minorities. And so they started out with the hippies and the beatniks and the flower power people and the brain deads in the 60s. If you remember that, you know, the anti-Vietnam people who actually
Hey, you're talking about me now. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
who actually cost us the war in Vietnam, which was an honorable war, trying to push back communism, which had already murdered 150 million people around the world in the 20th century. I was part of that. And all of a sudden, they changed the definition of honor. And they made the guys in Vietnam, 50-some thousand of them, they made them bums. And then from there, what happened? They said, well, now that we got that block, and by our leaders today, by the way, they are the children of those yo-yos back in the 60s.
So true.
But the fact is, then they went after the feminists. And they said, boy, you know, we've got to really empower you. We've got to make sure that men don't have any authority in the family. We've got to make sure that there is no unison in the family, that you've got to go out and have your own career. You've got to go out and do this and do that. Well, they wound up creating a voting bloc claiming that the minority of women, the women which are supposed to be minorities, are really being abused by when? Always the white man that's the attack, the scapegoat. And then what about the blacks? They turned history upside down to make the black community work themselves into a lather, because the black community believed that somehow white men, all white men, and especially Republican white men, were bad. When in fact, Republicans are the ones that gave them their freedom. And all of a sudden now we became the enemy. That's what the Democrats have done. But you see, and then they went the homosexual route. And they have other areas of always the white man is the enemy. But I want to just emphasize this. The reason for the executive order is they need the Hispanic vote because whites are bowing out of the Democratic Party. They're moving because they know that this is no longer a party that's friendly to them. And the problem with the Hispanic vote is that they have to get them worked up into a lather just like they did the black community. And that's why all of this stuff with the immigration, the unconstitutional executive orders, and the emphasis on how wonderful the Democrats are because they give these immigrants all of their rights and legal status and so forth. That's what it's about, folks. And you need to understand that. That's been their strategy for over 50 years. And it's not going to stop. It's going to get worse. As long as they have enough people to target with their lies and their deceptions, they will create arguments that are phony arguments. They will then create solutions that are phony solutions. Then they will blame the other guy, including the conservative and the Christian and the traditional family people. They'll blame them for their selfish ways and having caused the problems, whatever the problem is, and then they will provide a solution that makes them look good. And the mindless and the clueless love it and vote for them. And so there we are. And what are we trying to do? We are now trying to get those more conservative states in this constitutional republic to understand that they alone, with the Countermand Amendment and under Article 5, can bring this nation back to a constitutional republic that will protect them and their citizens so that our traditional Christian values will not be jettisoned in order to get votes. We have to stop that, folks. The media is not going to help us. They just deceive, they lie, they propagandize, the Democratic Party control them. When you hear things from the Democrats, especially in election years, it's never a matter for them to have independent thinking. It's always a matter that everyone parrots what the top DNC people tell him to say. It goes on. I mean, it's a mindless organization anymore. If I were a white man in the Democratic Party, I would be embarrassed to even say that I'm a Democrat because of what they have become. Okay, folks, and I'm not saying that the Republicans don't have problems. I am telling you, though, that the Democrats have denigrated this nation, including costing the lives of 50 million unborn babies, doctors, lawyers, politicians, charitable people, business people, entrepreneurs, geniuses. I mean, we have wiped them out, plus generations of them that would have been produced later. And the fact is, the Democrats have forced that, have caused that issue to be continuous and have protected the woman and this phony argument of choice. Okay, Susan, you may share whatever you want. Anything about what I said is fine. If not, then whatever else is on your mind.
Well, I just wanted to add, before we bring Jim on and others, that with the Jade Helm agenda, that our military and our police department have been compartmentalized, where they're being told one thing, but then there's, something else going to take place. The right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. And we're being misled also because the UN is going to be here in American communities taking part of these drills. And from the research that I've conducted, it was mentioned that in each group throughout our communities, there will be a UN officer making sure that our American troops that are here will be carrying out their orders. And if they don't, then, the UN officer will be responsible for making sure that our troops are doing it, or else, there's an agenda for that as well.
Yeah, they will be shot. They will be shot.
Yeah, they will be. And Vita, you and I, we've researched all the caskets that were ordered.
Yes.
The millions of caskets, and I believe Jim had also read an article on that, where there's such a shortage, there's being more reordered. So there's just so many.
And not to mention, the military morgues that they have on back order. They've already delivered what they could, but there's they're morgues. They're like a travel trailer.
Exactly.
Or like a utility trailer. I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. You're exactly right. Those are on back order. This is going on, folks, all across the country. When they first released the information about Jade Helm being a drill, first of all, our own troops that served in Iraq and Afghanistan didn't have access to these tanks and this type of equipment. This is hardcore, very hardcore armor that they're using. For those attacks that you were mentioning, Zita, like the cell phone attacks, those, what are the EMF, the waves that they're going to do?
Yeah, the low frequency, they're called the ELF waves.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's for that. I know there was a back order on the vehicles, too, from my intelligence sources to make sure that they would be protected against that.
Susan, let me ask you a question. I had recently heard, it was on one of the news reports, and I'm not sure which one it was. Oh, I know it. It was on RT. Sometimes I watch RT. It's a liberal program, but it really sometimes is unbiased. But at any rate, I do it because it gives me the other side as well. Now, what I wanted to ask is that this wave control or brain control through this electrical wave, can you give us some explanation of what that is and how that, because they have talked about this also, and you can you tell us, what this is, or do you have more detail about it?
Well, actually, Zita knows more about that than I do. I'm more proficient on some other avenues. But Zita, would you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I can explain it as quickly as I can. There's two frequencies the military uses. It's 402 megahertz and 613. 613 will make you kill yourself, in other words. If you notice in your community or across the nation, there's towers up, and they're not cell towers, they're frequency towers. And most of them are a half a mile apart. Some of them are a mile apart. It just depends on your area or the neighborhoods that they want to cover. They send out this frequency that will be initiated through your cell phone, and it goes out. It's a silent frequency. It is a ELF wave, and it does its damage. And those two frequencies right there. Now, the universe of harmony is on a 432. And it's just, it is very destructive. And I know that when you see people acting out and they act strange and do terrible things, it's because of these frequencies. I know that I very rarely have seen them use the 613. They don't have to. They can go to a 500, and it's very damning on your system, especially if you have your cell phone in your pocket, you know. So it is real. It's not a conspiracy. It is a fact. It is a fact, and it's used through DARPA and MK Ultra. Those programs have been developed over the past 60 years. They have it down perfected at 100% effective rate. So
all right, let me add to your comment. Jim, if you can get ready, I'd like to have you step in here in a moment.
Sure.
Let me add to that comment this, dealing with the Countermand Amendment. Now, our guests have presented some pretty alarming ideas, and there'll probably be some out there who will say, well, this is too conspiratorial. We just can't believe all this. I want to remind you that Governor Abbott doesn't think it is conspiratorial. He actually issued an edict that told his National Guard to monitor these vehicles that are going through Texas, the military vehicles and the UN vehicles, and to give them back reports so that the civil liberties of Texans will be protected. That's what that was about. And the constitutional rights of the state would be protected. Now, there are an untold number of areas where we have problems, enormous problems. I mean, enumerated rights, we can talk about that at another time. Unenumerated rights, what does that mean in the 10th Amendment? Who has those rights? How can the states protect those rights? Environmental issues, land grab issues. Up in Alaska, there was an executive order recently passed by the president just a few months ago, claiming land that was about the size of 3 of our smallest states in the lower 48, and it was so that the land would not be used for any purposes other than to preserve the habitat. That's just recently. And now Alaska only has 1.8% of its entire state owned by private citizens. Think about that. 67% of their land is controlled by the federal government. Nevada has 82% of its land controlled by the federal government. Now, folks, I want you to understand how serious this is. So, dealing with that, there are free market issues that need to be addressed, Bureau of Land Management issues, Internal Revenue Service issues. My goodness, I have so many different reports from people who have been damaged, especially conservatives, regarding how they were treated by the IRS. These court decisions, tax issues. I mean, there's an endless array, congressional statutes, budgets out of Congress. What happens if next year Congress and the president agree that we need another $1 trillion of debt, which has been going on for the last 6 years? And right now, the states can't do a single thing about it. Not a single thing can they do about it. Even if they take it to court, the court is not likely to vote in their favor, and then the court has no teeth to enforce it. Yeah. And so with the Countermand Amendment, what happens is 30 states countermand the congressional budget, and they say, Congress, you've overstepped your grounds. You're not going to put this $1 trillion of debt on our citizens, and we are countermanding it, and when 30 states countermand the same budget, this is rescinded. Well, now Congress has to rewrite it. And guess how they're going to rewrite it? They're going to rewrite it in a way more amenable to the states. so that the states will be able to have a partnership relationship with the government rather than one where they are looked at as subjects to federal mandates. And so the Department of Education issues, Common Core, unfunded liabilities. I mean, I understand right now that there are about $150 trillion of debt, that of unfunded liabilities that we have to pay off in the years to come. Healthcare issues, Obamacare, there are social issues, Roe versus Wade. I'd love to get rid of Roe versus Wade. Privacy issues, Fourth Amendment issues, and so forth. So this is a nonpartisan amendment that actually will allow the states to retain their states' rights to address issues such as unfunded liabilities, and then also to protect their economies in ways that they cannot right now. So it is very important, but there's one more thing that's very important about this amendment, and that is that it has an enforcement clause. You see, just about all of the other amendments to the Constitution that have already been ratified, they have a little statement at the bottom, and it says, and Congress shall have the authority to enforce the provisions of this article. All right, that sounds good. But unfortunately, the federal government chooses what they want to enforce and chooses what they don't want to enforce. That's why we have such an illegal immigration problem. And so with the Countermand Amendment, not only can they have this authority and power to countermand and rescind things that are burdensome to 30 states, but in addition to that, they can enforce the provisions, because if after 90 days the federal government doesn't prosecute an intentional violator, whoever it may be, could be a senator, could be someone in the House, someone in business, could be in the executive, it could be someone in the banking industry, it doesn't make any difference, could be a contractor, they can be prosecuted by an individual state now under state laws in order to make certain that the constitutional rights of that state are guaranteed and are protected. That's why the Countermand Amendment is so powerful. The states can actually protect their own states' rights and not allow the federal government to define them for them. Okay, now, having said all of that, just understand, folks, the Countermand Amendment gives us hope. We're going to be going on a 12-month tour. I will be doing a lot of traveling, and we'll be talking with governors and state legislators. We're actually working, we'll be working extremely hard in preparing the legislators for the 2016 session. And we will have our documents pre-formed documents that they'll be able to introduce in 2016 for a vote. And with that, we've got a chance. We need 34 applications. We have 19 states that are sponsoring it right now. I believe that with the proper follow-up and service to these legislators and even to the governors, we will be able to get those 34.
Hey,
now,
Charles, before you bring Jim on, I would like to ask the audience a question. The government has spent $9.7 billion on Jade Helm. Ask yourself, are they going to just blow this kind of money, because it's very significant, on a drill? Because they have a hidden agenda that they don't want you to know about. That is a lot of money. And that was just from last week, Elaine said. So this is a very serious, take it serious, and let's get busy with these solutions. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Zita. And then before Jim comes, one more thing. Go to countermands.us. That's with an S. Countermands.us. Order a copy of my new book, Countermand Amendment, The Missing Piece in the Article 5 Puzzle. You will be learning things about the countermand structure and the Article 5 application for state legislatures that you're not being told anywhere else. It's all based on sovereignty and legislatures under Article 5 and their retention of deliberative status. You need to get a copy of this book. And then when you also get a copy, you'll be able to follow what is our normal Tuesday night program. That is from 9 to 10. We have an Article 5 Countermand Amendment course, online course, that we are taking the audience through chapter by chapter. We're in chapter 7 right now. So if you order your book, it's $19.95. We'll actually pay the postage and the shipping, the postage and the packaging, and we'll get it off to you the same day. So be willing to do that. And then on top of that, if you would like to make a donation, click the donate button at the top of the page, countermands.us. and make a generous donation. We need your help. And again, this is an opportunity for you to participate in constitutional history, an event that's, in my opinion, the most important event since the Constitution itself. And we would be very grateful to you for that. And there's one more thing. We need to get a copy of the book, Countermand Amendment, and the associated documents to the state legislators around the country. There's 7,500 state legislators, and every one of those legislators need to receive a copy of this book. We need help in getting those books financed. So please, be careful. You can do that by ordering the book and then enter in legislator in the comment field. We'll know what to do with it then. And we will use your money very carefully, very wisely, and we'll get copies of these books into the hands of your people, your legislators, and they will then begin to understand what they have in Article 5, which they do not understand right now because the other Article 5 groups are giving them information that is solely inadequate and incorrect. And it bothers me. I've been in this thing for over 40 years. I probably have the longest longevity of anyone in this whole Article 5 camp, and I don't brag on that, but I just tell you that there are things that are more important than just having a convention. You need to retain sovereign authority in legislatures. You must not surrender it because future generations will not be able to use it effectively if you do. Okay, now Jim, why don't you come in here and share what's on your mind, please?
Okay. Thank you much. I'd like to thank my most honorable friends for having me on tonight. But more importantly, I'd like to thank all the listeners for tuning in. I'm going to attempt to basically tie a lot of what has already been said together in big picture, broad strokes, and maybe explain in a little bit more detail what our literal plan is for this summer, and most importantly, how you might be able to contribute other than the ways that have been pointed out. So, my background is actually in nuclear power, and was on a special project submarine, and it was a CIA operation, so I have a little bit of background there. I spent about 10 years of my life researching some of the hardest research I've ever done in my life to culminate a 300-year modern history look at how the world really works behind the scenes. And so I know the animal that we're all speaking about, and what has culminated to what some of, if you're a spiritual and biblical person, you might look at this as sort of an end of days scenario. If you're astrological, you'll see all the signs there. And so basically what I'm trying to say is all the genres of life basically talk about this time. And so I want to provide a little bit of history, and I want to provide a little bit of what's going on now, and then I'll try to also give you a little bit of a picture of what, though I don't have the ball, what I believe is coming. So with that, the past 100 years, but basically the turn of the century around 1900, is sort of the time when the British Empire put a lot of effort and finally was successful in getting the ear of our very wealthy people, particularly on Wall Street. So I just wanted everyone to know this. This isn't anything that came out of the blue. This isn't any kind of boogeyman or monster that just popped up out of the ground. This is a 100-year plan that has been basically put into effect, and it's been slow, but I'll use the word establishment for the global elitists who we all characterize it as the 90%, the 1% that control 90% of the world's wealth. So I just use the term establishment for that. So the establishment has been hard at work, with in particular, very important secret, and they were secret right up until about 1970, secret clubs, and that was the Council on Foreign Relations right after World War I. The other sister group of that, which actually formed first in the British Empire, was called the Royal Institute for International Affairs, and the nickname for that is the Chatham House. the name for the CFR was called the Pratt House, and that was in New York City. These two sister organizations from 1919 and 1921 moved forward. The elitists in Europe basically started to feel a little bit left out and started to balk a little bit that they weren't included in these meetings that were basically divvying up the world's resources for use in industry. So the Bilderberg Group was formed in 1953, and that tied in a lot of the wealthy in Europe. 1973, David Rockefeller, who was the chairman of the CFR at the time, and his partner in this, Zbigniew Brzezinski, who ended up being Jimmy Carter's Secretary of State, if you're old enough to remember. At any rate, the Trilateral Commission was formed, and this brings in a lot of the Asian elites. So this is how we're looking at this now. Okay, this is a global elitist agenda. Okay, so we have, moving forward from there, events like the 1960s and early 70s, where the establishment here in this country anyways thought they were going to lose the country to revolution, and really started and learned a lot from that, and so they really started to buckle down on the procedures for, at that time, FEMA, and which we all know eventually becomes, through the Patriot Act, security and what we have today. So that sort of was a genesis there. Just wanted everyone to know about a little bit about executive orders next. Orders started really with President Franklin Roosevelt during the first Great Depression. And what we had there was, his fear, actually the establishment's fear at the time. Back then, the presidents had handlers, and they weren't necessarily establishment members like they are today. But at any rate, it was to handle the dissidents and the upheaval that, hungry people, starving people have when, they don't have food, shelter, and clothing, or their families are suffering. And so, their various violent means start to erupt and mobs gather. And so some first executive orders started there. Just so everyone knows, I'll move quickly. Every president since then has sort of built upon this executive order system. They're really basically dictatorial powers. I mean, they don't ask for approval from the Congress, and they have pretty much, when put into effect, or if and when put into effect, would just be law, and that would be law that the president's made. So to carry forward to today, the president has basically built upon those executive orders in a larger number. So they've grown exponentially as the decades have unfolded, and hence the reason why you might have heard things like Obama has written more executive orders than any other president, which is true. So, but I just wanted you to know the genesis of that. So I guess the point I'm trying to make to everyone out there is you have to understand this. This isn't one man. This isn't one group of men. This is men and women, and global. Okay, this is a very concerted effort globally. Okay, so my point to everyone out there listening is that pulling out and plucking out several of these types is not going to solve the problem. It is a octopus with its tentacles wrapped around the world, and those in the know this, and they're very fearful of it, because in the beginning, when it started to form, it wasn't so very bad. But when President Truman had taken Kennedy aside and told him that he had no idea that when he signed the papers in 1947 for the CIA, that it was going to grow into the monster that it had become, and told Kennedy, quite frankly, he said, I don't even know if the seat of the presidency is powerful enough anymore to disband this. So what President Kennedy killed was he was trying to do too much too quick. He had basically cut down the CIA, the top 3 levels, and back then every position in the CIA had an equivalent position in the military, and they literally, their desks sat right across from each other. The CIA was good at planning, gathering information and intelligence and putting plans together. And the military obviously was the logistics side of the thing, the actual practical things like moving people around and armaments and whatever might come out of those plans. So cut deep, and he was mostly that was brought up. The impetus for that was brought on by the fact that it made him, wear egg on his face in the Bay of Pigs. He was promised that it was going to be successful, and he didn't want to do it. And they basically told him, okay, you can do it, but you're going to be on your own. So at any rate, President Kennedy ends up being assassinated because he tried to do really a whole sundry of things. Of course, his brother had the most convictions for an attorney general to this day against organized crime. So the brothers were trying to level the playing field back then, and they lost their lives for it. So that's what happens to anybody, including presidents, that think about going against the establishment. So that was the whole fact that Kennedy was shot in broad daylight and it was filmed is not an accident. This is a very poignant psychological impression to be put upon not just the general citizenry of the states, but of course any president that would come after him. So we move forward. So I just wanted to give you that little bit of history about how we've kind of come to this time and place. This has certainly not been anything that just has been hatched in any one administration in the past few. So they've all been working on it. They all are steered. Some of them are more, if you pardon the expression, establishment up than others. In other words, they've belong to more groups and they are more deeply embedded than others, but for the most part. I went ahead, just as a quick side note, in the Institute, I went ahead and cross-referenced all the establishment members with all the lists of all the secret clubs. So when you take a look at, say, this appendix that is attached to the piece of work, you could very easily discern, who they are, where they go, where they've graduated, what colleges, and what 5 genres of vocations they end up in. So, and that included, and I wanted to finally dispel for the world all of the rumors and all the conspiracies about hearing the Jews run the world, 5 families run the world, the permits run the world, all of this conjecture and hearsay that no one really has a handle on. So I went ahead and cross-referenced all of them, and I put little labels, their names, Skip Bar, Bilderberg, Trilateral, but also Freemasons, Skull and Bones, Old Scholars, whether they were Jewish or not. So you'd be able to, and more. Then you'd be able to just easily kind of make your own, conclusions, about just by taking, flipping through the appendix. So there you have sort of the nuts and bolts of that. And once again, this is not just United States people. This is people from all over the world, from every nation. All the richest people belong to these clubs. So they've been trying to establish the New World Order. So now we go back to World War II real quick. World War II was, because World War I didn't do it with the League of Nations, because our Congress was still beholden to us, they refused to join, very much like 100 years earlier, the Russian Tsar refused to join. So in World War II, they finally got what they wanted, and that was the first setting of the stage for international organizations. So that's where we have the birth of the United Nations, the World Bank, the General Agreement for Tariffs, etc. So, and trade. So, and a few more. So this is the first attempt at moving toward this New World Order. As early as President Nixon, if you're paying, and I would, of course, being a historian, I was paying attention, and this is the first president that actually mentions these. We don't really find out the general citizenry, and it's not announced really that the CFR even exists, by the 1970s. So Nixon, the New World Order, and then every president after that, mainly George Bush Sr. and Clinton were pretty famous for mentioning it more than once. But at any rate, they sort of kind of let people know that it's coming. One of the establishment members, and I won't mention his name because it won't make a difference, but his point was poignant, and he said, this isn't about if the New World Order is going to happen, it's just a question of when. And that was said in the 1950s. So like I said, this has been an ongoing plan, and here we are at the end of days, when they're executing their final pieces of it. So this is what we're experiencing. All of us like-minded core group, most honorable friends, have spent their lives, basically, or a good portion of it, learning about this and uncovering that, and delving deeper into history than anyone's been concerned to look. And so to all the listeners out there, this is what we've been trying to do tonight, and provide a little bit of an education on what has been going on. So here we are. But let's talk about now the present. And what the present is a lot of what you've heard tonight. And I just want to try to briefly go through what our plan is so that you can understand it in the context of the history that I just laid out. All right, so we want to provide, we have launched a campaign called the Governor's Hope. It's called that because without the governors calling an emergency session, the states, okay, we cannot get Charles in front of these groups of House and Senate legislators at one time, and if you excuse my brashness, with their mouths shut and their eyes and ears open, for them to listen to exactly what the Countermand Amendment is about. The Countermand Amendment is a simple piece of legislation. Charles drafted it, and it's not complex. This isn't about, turning a big verbose piece of paperwork. It sits on one page, there's 8 sections, and there's a couple of sentences to each section. So I just want to put everyone's mind at rest that this is not going to turn into this big deliberation process where it goes back and forth between houses and, the rewording and all of this. Basically, it's written pretty much ready to go. And I'm going to stick to the meat of what this amendment states, and this is going to clarify a lot for people that haven't gotten a grip on it yet. State legislatures in the several states shall have the authority to countermand and rescind any congressional statute, judicial decision, executive order, treaty, government agency's regulatory ruling, and any other government or non-government mandate, including the case of spending and credit. So there you have the meat and potatoes of the amendment. And I'm sure you've heard enough in the first hour to everyone sort of expanded that, and particularly Charles. So this is our plan, the Governor's Hope. Okay, we want to go ahead and we're going to use, and I'm going to explain everything in detail to you people out there because you need to hear it, because I want you to participate. I want you to know what this plan is. We're going to use Susan Rice's Gold Star status to open the door to get into the governor's offices. Okay, her status as a Gold Star mom is nationally known. She has done just, a doctorate's degree worth of work, I would say, in my own professional opinion, to prove her son's death was an ambush by our own government. When I talk about volumes of proof and paperwork that would stand up to the highest court in the land, I'm not joking. So, and to this day, she still works and is lucky if she garners, several hours sleep a day. So, our other honorable friend here, and this is the listening audience, I just need to mention this, Charles Kacprowicz has spent his life in pursuit of trying to get this countermand passed. And the Lord has put us all together, and we're going to make it happen. We're going to make this man's dreams true, and it's going to be all of our dream, because this, as you've heard, is the solution. We will empower the states to be able to start to untangle the rat nest of federal encroachments that have been put upon the states and all of our citizens. This is not what the framers and our founding fathers had intended for us. So we have been usurped, and it has been slowly eroded, but it's time that this grassroots movement, and we are going to fly under the radar and get it done this summer. I know that Charles has plans to spend the next year. I am a very aggressive person, and I'm going to try to get it done. But I'm not going to mess around with this. And I have Susan Price is working these kind of hours because she believes in that too. And also Zita Andrews and the rest of our core team. So we're all on the same page there. All right, so we have a letter of intent that basically top of this information pack that we're going to send after Susan Price has gotten her foot in the door, talk to the aide of the governor, and set an appointment for a teleconference. Okay, we send off this package, and I'm going to share with you the package. Okay, and after that, we conduct teleconferences with Susan. Leading off, I'm going to make a small appeal, and Charles will finish it as a presenter of the Countermand amendment and the couple other pieces of paperwork that are involved in this, and he will close them out, and that's our hope. So here we go. Basically, it's just the cover letter simply states, please find this letter more informative than an attempt to bind you in any way. Quite simply, here is an outline of our hope for your participation in what we feel is the paramount historical challenge of our time. So, first of all, we'll make sure that the governors understand what the Countermand is about. So I give a brief little history, and I mention some of the founding fathers, of course, Madison a few times since he was the father of the Constitution. And I'll just read a few of these quotes so that you can kind of get a feel for some of the history I provide. And this was actually in some of the papers, but it got put into the Constitution through Article 5. It equally enables the general and the state governments to originate the amendment of errors, as they may be pointed out by the experience on one side or the other, and that was James Madison. This amendment and its modification may appear to be a daunting task because all of the current amendments in the United States Constitution have been proposed by Congress. So we all know that during the past 50 years especially, the federal government has grown exponentially. So states have experienced a certain precedence that has been put upon by the federal government, and that includes being leveraged by, the U.S. senators and congressmen, and there's a lot of this leveraged by fear of negative repercussions to states, and a lot of them are ignorant of their constitutional state rights for government.
Jim, you are breaking up really bad.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Are you talking? Pardon?
Is that a little bit better?
It's. I guess it's on your end, but it's breaking up really, really bad.
Jim, work on trying to fix your problem, and then I will have the same.
What did you say, Charles?
I was inviting Cindy Toth to take part in this. She's our executive coordinator. But Jim, are you back now?
I am back, and I just was wondering if this phone is any better.
Yeah, we can hear you better now. All right, go ahead and continue. We'll have Sandy come on after you're done.
Okay. Basically, the big picture for this plan is to finish up, to give the governors an information pack, basically describe this, what we see through our intelligence as the State of the Union, and quite simply, beyond our unsurmountable debt and rampant cases of corruption and greed, there's a general state of obesity, apathy, and ignorance coupled with spiritual bankruptcy that's blanketed the nation's general citizenry. So, I go ahead and provide the governors with some links to show them, with video proof anyways, some of the things like the 500,000 black plastic coffins that are stored in Madison, Georgia, and of course there's other storage facilities across the country, but then of course all the armaments and vehicles that have been being transported by train across the country. So that gives them a little bit of a feel for what we're talking about as far as the state of the nation, and hopefully provides a little bit of impetus. Once again, the strategy is because the nation has found itself in a very plausible imminent danger, solution is being sought after that will be facilitated through something called ex parte petition, or a secret emergency call to session of both the House and Senate legislatures. Now, where the citizens, where our listeners could help us is we're looking for people in every single state, we're looking for one person that's going to take on a task of calling up each one of the members of the House and Senate of their state legislatures, and basically we will provide them with, the meat and potatoes of that section that I read off from the Countermand Amendment, and also a quick little few sentences about how we would like the member of this House or state legislator to, go ahead and tell them that we're behind the Countermand Amendment, and we'd like them to call the governor and tell them that they are behind the Countermand Amendment and that they are also behind him calling an emergency session. Everything moves towards the governors to be able to, so that they feel empowered and they feel the need and they feel the want and desire from underneath them that to call this emergency session. Because it's going to be through those that we get a quick resolution on whether or not they're going to approve the Countermand Amendment. And like I said, we want to try to get that done, by the end of the summer. So with that, we have, and what's been talked about a little bit, your part, as far as the listeners knows, if you'd like to take on one of the states and be responsible for giving them all the members of the House and Senate a call to see if they can't, you can't drum up some support and get them to give a call to the governor themselves so that the governor feels impetus to have these emergency sessions called. That's where we need your help, and outside of the things that have been aforementioned. So I don't want to take up all of the time here, so I'm just going to mention there are a lot of other parts of our grassroots campaign. We're going to have grassroots radio stations making public service announcements about this. We're going to have nationally known VIPs call the state legislatures and their governors. We have, of course, our project team. You would become one of the 50 state directors that is responsible for getting through to both the House and Senate. We have national group leaders because of Susan Price's just phenomenal contacts and knowledge of just people and networking. And Jade is obviously very involved in that also. We are looking to try to get in touch with everything from the American Legion to the Boy Scouts to Gold Star Moms to Blue Star Moms to all walks of life, large groups. We have we have pastors that belong to large groups of conservative people that are looking to get involved somehow. So, whether it's 600 or 5,000 or 30,000, this entire thing we want to mushroom out, like I said, on a grassroots level, and we want everyone to feed up to the governors and provide them the courage to call these emergency sessions to make this happen. And I believe we can do it. Charles and a lot of veterans that have worked with him in the past have laid a tremendous foundation. They've definitely they've definitely made the Countermand Amendment known throughout the ranks across the country. So we feel very strong about this, but we need your help. We need everybody's help. This is an all hands on deck, if you pardon the expression, type of movement. And that's my plea to all the listeners out there. Please get involved. It's going to cost you some of your time, money, energy, and effort to get involved. But you know what? You're going to be part of something historic because this has never been done in the history of the United States, and it can be done. And we're going to show and set the recipe for how everything should be done as far as positive change in these United States starts with the people through their House and Senate, through their state legislatures. And I just want to thank you for your time. I'll pass the mic on to the next person. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. The fact is, Jim said a mouthful. We are, at this present time, I am reviewing his letter to the governors, and we were trying to get it into a synopsis by today, but it wasn't possible. The file came to me in a format I couldn't open, and so we're working on it with a Word document. The fact is, by tomorrow we should have that done. But let me explain something that the audience needs to understand. The governor has no authority under Article 5 to convene a convention. None. We are not looking to get the governor involved because he has some kind of authority in deciding how to use Article 5. He does not. But what he does do, he has two things that can be very important. One of which is he can call special sessions. What that means is that some states are biannual in their meetings. Texas is one, North Dakota is another, I think Arkansas is another, but that means they don't meet every year. Now, if there's an issue that comes to the governor and he sees some sense of urgency about it, and there are sometimes some limiting laws in the states that restrict how a session can be called, but at any rate, if he sees some urgency about it, he can actually direct the legislatures to meet in a special session for the purpose of addressing that issue. So our hope is that if the governors find themselves unable to actually call a special session for whatever reason, they will also then have the opportunity of influencing the legislatures and legislators in a positive way. In a recent meeting I had with a policy director in one of the Midwestern southern states, the policy director said to me, he said, after looking at the amendment and meeting with me for an hour, he said, Charles, he says, we will adopt this amendment. Now, why? Because he saw that the governor, once the amendment is ratified, can actually decide, and again in cooperation with the legislature, but can actually decide what laws and regulations can be countermanded. And then with that, coordinate it with the other states so that the initiating countermand state is trying to secure 29 others so that that particular law could be land grabs, could be energy, it could be healthcare, it could be education, could be budgets. There's a whole host of things that it could be. But the fact is there will be an orderly process, and when 30 states countermand, then it is a rescinded law. Now, in addition to that, the government then has the option to rewrite it. Yes, the government is not going to be put out of business, but they will have the option to rewrite it if it's rescinded. But the fact that it's a rescinded law means that particular law is no longer enforceable. Doesn't matter if it's an EPA ruling or a congressional statute, even a court decision, such as with traditional marriage. There are 37 states out there that all are allowing same-sex marriage, but only 3 of them did it voluntarily. All of the others did it because a federal district court said that it was unconstitutional to prevent same-sex marriages, and therefore they overruled constitutional amendments by the people to protect traditional marriage, and on and on and on. So the point is now, with the governor having, with this thing ratified, the governor has a tool to protect his state's rights, to protect his citizens' rights, and also to address issues like unfunded liabilities and a host of other problems that are important to that state. And so when we talk about the governors, I want the audience to understand the governor per se has no authority under Article 5, but he has 2 interests. 1, he can have a great influence on the legislators to help us get this thing through, and 2, he can also participate in deciding what issues. The state will probably have a countermand committee, and they will decide what issues are to be countermanded. And the legislature could very well say to the governor, we want your office to actually organize that committee and begin building a library that is for the purpose of identifying laws and regulations that we need to be looking at as possible countermeasures. And so that's the reason why the governors are so important. And I want the audience to understand that we're not looking for the governor to convene this Article 5 convention. He is simply going to influence it because of his relationship to the legislators, and hopefully give us some impetus before we go into 2016. So this is a very important fact to kind of get together. Okay, now, Sandy, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Sandy, why don't you share with us what's on your mind?
Well, I have been working, with the Countermand for so long now, and what I've become aware of is that the average American doesn't know what's going on in this country. And the more you follow and check on the news and listen to what's going on, the more frightened you get, because little by little, all of our rights are being eroded, and they're working to take things away from us. Now, I've heard different things about Jade, Helm, so I guess I'll play devil's advocate in a way. I heard Congressman Gomer, from a representative from the state of Texas, said that he had talked to military and he didn't feel there was any need to worry. But then again, I've talked to a friend who's a retired officer who lives in Missouri and who's talking about UN vehicles going through the state. And it confuses me about why we need to have UN vehicles here. So I'm looking at these things are not sounding right, okay? And we can speculate about what might happen when. But I know one thing for sure from everything that I've been watching happen, especially since 2009 when I started a Tea Party. And then I changed over because I realized it wasn't effective. And I became a member of Citizen Initiatives. And Charles and I have worked together now for years. Just think about how many ways we have lost our rights. Congress has turned over lawmaking to federal agencies. They really write the laws. The EPA is telling coal mines, you need to shut down, or power plants, no, you're going to have to increase, your control of emissions until we're going to put you out of business because it's going to be so expensive. So we have loss of jobs, Obamacare. Oh, we'll write the rules to make people dependent on it, but meanwhile, we're also going to kill jobs. Now, that has never made sense to me either. Why the government keeps writing laws, especially in the last 7 or 8 years, that are killing jobs.
Sandy, let me add something that complements what you just said. I have a news bulletin here. Kentucky hospitals lay off staff and reduce services because of Obamacare.
That's exactly what's happening within the medical field. But all the companies that are now bound to a 30-hour full-time work week, and having to provide health insurance on a government mandate, and have cut hours. They've laid people off. And I know I've talked to people in work for different companies, and they've had their hours cut. So now they're having to work another part-time job so that they can make enough to live on. So, and just the fact of the Obamacare, and that the government is now mandating that someone must buy something, this goes against all of our freedoms. We have lost our freedom to worship, because every time a Christian comes out and says anything, they're attacked. I talked on one show about Operation Choke Point, and here comes the Department of Justice leaning on the banks to shut down the bank accounts of gun store owners as a way of driving the gun dealers out of business. so that they can stop the gun sales or slow them down. And you could just go on and on and on. And sometimes I want to hit people over the head. That don't you realize what's been happening to you? Don't you realize what the federal government is doing? And then to give control of the internet to the United Nations, that totally goes against our Constitution, because our Constitution is supposed to be the sovereign law of the land. And it's not supposed to put an international entity in charge of what we do. So that in itself is a big violation of our rights. You know, let's not talk about the gun laws they've tried to enact. And, you know, we can go on and on and on and on. But every time I turn around, I hear one more way, one more thing. The border's not being closed. Illegal aliens, and I'm going to call them by their right name, coming into the country at will and not being controlled. People being killed by aliens who should have been jailed years ago. But hey, you know, progressives want them running around. So maybe someday, you know, they might become a voter. An illegal voter, probably, too. But everything, you know, whether it's not securing the borders, trying to give all these illegal people rights in this country, trying to force the states to now give them benefits. And that's why we had that court case. And so far, at least the court is still holding. They're trying to keep an injunction on it and stop it from happening. But who knows when that's going to end? Because the court really doesn't have that kind of power over the president. And then you look at Congress, all the problems the so-called conservatives have made. I know there's a few good ones. But how many times do they let things go and just cave in and make things worse? The NSA, you know, all the information that's being stored and kept. You know, it's just so mind-boggling how much you can go on and on and on. You know, I mean, it is absolutely frightening. I remember, because I'm an old lady, you know, how... Yeah, okay, so you have a couple of years on me. All right. When I grew up, there was prayer in the schools. There was a sense of morality, a sense of ethics, a sense of respect for the flag. And all that is being taken out of the schools, and all the people out there are going, you know, why? We can't salute the flag anymore? You can't wear a t-shirt with a flag on it to school? Little by little, all of our rights are being eroded by the progressives one way or another. There is so much going on, and we need the states to stand up and take their sovereignty back and start fighting some of these things. To say, we're going to countermand Obamacare. We're going to countermand the EPA regulations that are killing the coal industry. We are going to countermand this treaty with the UN. No, we can go on and on. It's going to be hard for the states to pick which things they want to countermand first. But one thing I do know, that if we start having some really major success of the calls for the Countermand Amendment hitting Congress, I think the federal government might just get a little bit worried and wonder if it needs to slow down in what it's doing to us.
Or be forced to look at the states as partners and associate themselves with the states in ways that they are mutually looking for solutions. I see no contradiction in terms thinking that the federal government has interest in, let's assume, clean air. And so rather than put the EPA in charge to decide how to define clean air, the government with the countermand will have to look at the states and say, look, we've got an issue that we would like to resolve. Can you help us resolve it? Now the 50 states will have a way in which to resolve that issue because the federal government won't want it countermanded. And so now you're going to wind up with laws that are going to be a proper balance of constitutional power. And remember, folks, the states, the state legislatures in 1787, I've said this many times, they created the federal government. The federal government did not create the states. And the states retained for themselves the sovereign deliberative authority to alter and modify the conduct of the federal government in Article 5. Sovereign authority. So what we are doing is perfectly constitutional, it's right, and it's the last hope I believe we have for a peaceful resolution of our loss of rights that the federal government has been allowed to take from us over the last 30 or 40 years. It has been done, and every time they pass a new law, whether it be by the BLM or the EPA or whether it be IRS, they tighten the noose around our neck a little bit more. Folks, all we have to do is look at the 20th century. For those of you out there that say, oh, this is too conspiratorial, this is too mind-boggling. I mean, these guys are going way off the deep end. Folks, I want you to understand something. When Hitler gained power, one of the first things he did was to control the healthcare system. And by doing so, he was able to make the people dependent on him. So they'll do whatever he said, that along with their economy. And by the time the 20th century stopped or ended, there were at least 100 million, maybe 150 million people who were murdered by communists, and maybe another 20 million or so by Nazis who are trying to install their godless religions on the populace. These were things that happened because the people didn't use their rights at that time, which they had constitutions, well, not in Russia or China, but they did in Germany, and they actually didn't use them because they didn't want to get involved. Well, folks, if you don't want to get involved, then shame on you. When they start knocking on your door and taking you away and your kids away and you confiscate your belongings, don't cry on my shoulders. The fact is you were the one that allowed it by burying your head. So I'm telling you, we are at a critical juncture. This is not a joke. I look at the 20th century and I say, what a disaster. What an incredible disaster. But there's another disaster that came out of the 20th century in '73. And that was Roe versus Wade, which has cost us 50 million babies. But the world, through this abortion nonsense that has been advanced by Marxist feminists, the world has annihilated 700 million to 1 billion people right now. And so we're not talking about something that's just idle conversation. We have serious, serious issues. If you want to solve your population problem, then do it some other way. Don't kill people. That's not the way to do it. And yet at the same time, the Marxists and the feminists and the liberals, they always think that there are ways to handle things that are causing the annihilation of many, many people. You know, God says that the ways of a man lead to destruction and death. The fact is that he doesn't seek the things that the Lord wants him to have. So the point that I'm making is we have a matter that needs to be addressed. I'm going to read something else here. Kentucky hospitals suffocating. Did someone want to say something? Okay, Kentucky hospitals suffocating under Obamacare. I alluded to this a moment ago. In Lexington, Kentucky, while Kentucky has gained national prominence as the only southern state to fully embrace Obamacare, its hospitals have the law has left them facing billions of dollars in cuts and forced them to lay off staff, shut down services, and worry for their financial health and in some cases their survival. Now folks, that's what happens when you use dictatorial methods by which to install a distribution system of wealth that really doesn't create wealth. And it doesn't give choice. It doesn't give an opportunity for people to do better, whether he's a doctor or a nurse or a hospital or individuals supplying them with supplies and so forth. When you take away their ability to do what they do innately in a free market economy, you always wind up with an economy that is destroyed. So these are just some other issues besides the Jade Helm issue. The fact is that the that the Countermand Amendment can address. And we can see the states using it in a way that will remedy these problems in a way that will not allow the states to encroach on states' rights. Okay, now, Jen, did you have something else you said you wanted to share, or was that somebody else?
No, here I want to step in.
Okay, go ahead.
The most threatening issue that we have right now is Jade Helm, because if we cannot push back on Jade Helm, we will not get any of the others. That's how important Jade Helm is. Jade Helm is a total takeover of the American citizenry through martial law, which will come later. And we have to stop that. That is the most important thing that we can do. And let me reiterate here. We, Susan and I and others, are going to be hitting the road here within 2 weeks to start this effort. And we need your bodies. We need your bodies on a local level at the state capitol. If you live in that area, we will be all networking on social media, Twitter and Facebook, to let you know when we will be there and meet at the capitals. And of course, Charles, you will come later. And I know that you can have your book signing at Books A Million. You will be there. We can all have these together so that we can create bodies. We need hundreds of people there on a state level. Surely people on a state level, on a local level, can show up in the masses for freedom to stop this and push this back and get engaged. There is a price for freedom. And although it is not fighting right now, this is another way of fighting before the shots are fired. We don't want that. And we know that our government is not on the up and up. When martial law comes, there will be chaos. There will be utter chaos in the streets, and they will implement their red and their blue lists. And, you know, Susan and I have been told that. We do have intelligence sources that are in there to know, as well as Ben Pam. And he has family members. He has members that's in Congress, Senate, and everything. So we have the information. We have to come together. That's how important it is. Now, we will start in Florida and move our way westward we don't have to go to Texas. Texas has been taken care of, even though they are still moving military assets in the area. There was just recently, there was probably 50 to 70 rocket launchers that's being stored in a little bitty old town. So it's not because they're storing them there to just store them. They may want to use those at a later date. We don't know. We can only speculate at this point. But my point is this: if you do not get engaged in at least pushing back Jade Helm, we will not get to do anything else. That's how important it is. So we need to share this information, share the page, network it, get it out. It needs to go viral. And then go ahead.
Zita, let's clarify something for the audience. When we are talking about the contacting the governors, the fact is, what you have in mind, as I understand, is that they would take an action similar to what Greg Governor Abbott did in Texas. Is that what you're thinking?
They have to show up at this town hall meeting, because if the people are not there and they're not concerned, why should the government?
Okay, but the goal is to get the governor to, one, recognize the urgency of the hour and to issue an edict, something close to, or a directive, something close to what Governor Abbott has done.
Absolutely.
And then also to encourage the governor to support the Countermand amendment for the legislature. Is that the idea?
That's the idea.
Okay,
because that is the solution after the Jade Helm. You know, that is the pushback of all of these usurpations through treaties, and that's our ultimate goal. But if we can't push Jade Helm back and stop it in its track, then we're not going to get to do the other. We won't get to go to the next level.
All right, let me clarify one more thing now. I understand what you said, and I see the logic and the reasoning of it, and I understand that this is a dangerous situation that could unravel. Now, first of all, Jade Helm is a military operation that is doing in the western states maneuvers with live, or at least military equipment and troops, leaving question marks as to just what their purposes are. Is that what I'm understanding correctly?
Yes, and it involves UN troops as well. It involves the Sputniks. It involves China. It's a conglomeration of all nations through the UN that is going to be assisting. We don't want that. That is an act of war.
All right, let me add something else then, Zita.
Okay.
The fact is that because there has been literally no understanding of state legislature sovereignty in my lifetime under Article 5, and because the Article 5 groups that have come into the picture, Convention of States and Compact for America, even the BBA task force, the term limit people and so forth, they came in thinking that somehow it's a political engagement, and that there have to be political resolutions between governors and Congress and so forth in order for Article 5 to be used by the legislatures. Because of all of that stuff, sovereignty was never an issue with any of them. We have approached it differently. We have said, and this is important because it also affects Jade Helm, we have said that state legislatures alone are the sovereign body under Article 5, and have the sovereign authority to modify the conduct or any part of the federal government or any part of the federal government with the Countermand amendment through rescissions. Now, why I say it that way is because as long as they retain their sovereignty and they understand the importance of that, then no matter what happens, no matter whether the Congress makes laws that literally put this nation in martial law, whatever it may be, the states will retain the ability to stop it through their sovereign authority. That's the point that I'm trying to make. And that's part of the message that I find myself trying to give the legislators as well as the governors, that there is hope in that sovereign authority. There is no hope in politics. And there's no hope in the possibility that we will resolve these issues even if some emergency military operation is forced down on us. There's no hope of resolving that just with politics. Sovereignty and state legislatures are the way to restore this republic and to put the military in a place where they're under the control of the government and the people.
Yes.
So I want the audience to understand that sovereignty is the key, and with it, the states can restore our republic. I was asked not too long ago, last year as a matter of fact, to join an effort that was for the purpose of getting rid of the people in the White House, that is removing them, not killing them, but removing them, to arrest them and get them out. And it was supposed to be some kind of a military operation. And I said to this individual, I said, wait a minute. I said, do you understand what you're saying? And they said, well, what do you mean? And I said, let's assume that what you are suggesting is done. And let's assume that the federal government does, in fact, come to the end of itself in its present administrative form. Let's assume that. Now, who controls our Constitution then? And of course, the answer was, well, the military. And I said, that's exactly why I can't support you. because we have to do it constitutionally. And we have to do it so that the military is the instrument rather than the tyrannical ruler, even if their initial purposes are honorable. Because now they have to decide, that is, the military would have to decide what the Constitution means. And then, on top of that, even if they were benevolent, even if they returned to civil authority again, then it would always be possible for future military operations to do the same thing with another civilian government. I said the precedent would be terrible. And so for that reason, we must work with this Constitution as we have it, or we're going to lose it.
Yes, and another thing. We must save our military. It is up to us. They are in a quagmire. And we have to save them from that. Now, they will protect the people, but we have to get active. We have to get engaged in this fight, even on this level, without carrying weapons, people. This is designed to take our sovereign authority back. Jade Helm is the beginning to take our sovereign authority away. And our military, we literally have to save them to where they can stand down, and because they took an oath to serve and protect the people, not the president, not this oligarchy, not this tyrannical reign that's in the White House. It is we the people, but we the people have to get involved. And if we do not get involved now, we have lost it completely. It is, I cannot put it to you any other way than that. It's now or never, like Elvis Presley said.
Am I on? Can you hear me?
Yes. And who?
Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
I belong to a group called the Outspoken Patriots, and we are planning a festival next year in October 8th, 9th, and 10th, and we're trying to raise as many people together as possible for Americans' voice to be heard and to step aside from this corrupt government that we have. We're trying to get we the people's voice heard, and I agree 100% with what you're saying. Our government has gone too far, but I question whether our military, I have seen articles where our military has been asked not to pray in public, but they do anyhow because they don't believe in what the president's telling them to do. They believe in our constitutional rights.
Right.
And God bless all these men and women that fight for our freedoms.
Well, but, thank you. And you as well.
We're trying to make our voices heard and get America back on track to where it was a beautiful, free nation. And these Islamics that come in here and they think that, they can take our freedoms and twist them to where our freedom gives them the right to step on our flag or burn our flag. We have laws against that. It's just that we don't have law enforcement enforcing those laws. And it ticks me off because if our law enforcement enforced these laws, it wouldn't be so rampant in America.
Right, but the Countermand has the enforcement clause, and Charles can explain that to you.
Yes, the fact is that once the Countermand is ratified, the states then can countermand and rescind with only 60% of the states countermanding a particular law or ruling. They can actually rescind any law or regulation. And then, in order to make certain that they have their constitutional rights in the Countermand Amendment protected, they can enforce that rescission by prosecuting intentional violators of the provision with state laws if the federal government doesn't after 90 days. So you can take Reed for an example, and he had 350, maybe he doesn't have it anymore, he's not the Senate leader, but he had maybe 340 or 50 different bills that had been presented to him by the House, and they just sat on his desk. He did nothing with them. That's a dereliction of duty. And had something like that happened after the Countermand has been ratified, one of the 50 states could have arrested him and put him in prison for denying them their states' rights. And so for that reason, we have this opportunity to put the states in a place where they can be the final arbiters in all constitutional matters and enable your kinds of people to have their constitutional rights restored, veterans have their rights restored, and to have an honorable government again that is working for the purpose of advancing righteous purpose and righteous causes. So at any rate, the Countermand Amendment does what you're saying, and it's doing it in a way that is peaceful. And it has the enforcement provision that allows the state legislatures to say, that's enough, you've gone too far. It could be somebody that is being prosecuted for an intentional violation of the provisions of the Countermand Amendment. It could be a contractor, it could be a member of the Senate, could be the President of the United States. One state, if they have evidence that that individual has deliberately denied them their state's rights in this amendment, they could arrest them, or certainly charge them. So that's the power of the Countermand, and that's why the balance between the federal government and the states will become a healthy balance, constitutionally proper, so that we can have a government that is really doing the work that is good for us.
And that's where our duty as patriots comes in, is we are patriots. Our duty is to defend our country from our government. When we see our government doing wrong, then it needs to be corrected.
It does, and I agree. And we see, just like with Ferguson, Baltimore, and things like that, these people are being funded. They're being funded by Soros or Obama or whoever. But this is why they're being so effective. We have to be just as effective to counter this. We need everybody's help. Everybody has to get engaged. And if that is just sharing and making sure that the Patriot Citizen page goes viral, so everybody, it's all about information and sharing information. And this is why they want to shut the internet down, so that we can't have the ability to do this, because it is effective. And they know that. So when we go to these state capitals and we're talking to the governors, and then Charles comes in and he closes them, because he's the closer. He's the attorney on this. He is the professional of the Countermand and the Article 5 and the loopholes of our sovereignty to save our nation and stop them in their tracks. We have to stop. Jade Helm is detrimental to every American in this nation. We have to stop it. We are willing to go out and put ourselves on the line at all cost and get it done. And we are starting the most important states are the ones Texas is taken care of. You have Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. You have Arizona, California, New Mexico. These that are on the Jade Helm original. Now it is statewide, even though they didn't list the rest of the states. We are hitting those states first. So everybody from those states at your state capitals, please come to the town hall meeting, because if we make these arrangements and the governor calls the legislatures to come together in an emergency session, in a town hall meeting, and the people don't show up, listen, we're done. We are just done.
I know. We have to stand up and have our voices heard. If we don't make this stand, then again we're just rolling over and being like ushers and sticking our heads in the sand.
Right.
And we're going to be bulldozed over.
Yes, and you can be broke. You can be broke and show up. Your body there means everything at that town hall meeting. Hundreds and thousands would be awesome, but even hundreds would be great. And
I live in St. Louis, and when the police officers were told in Ferguson to stand down, it's like, are you kidding me? This is the time to step up.
Right. And we know that, but we know the agenda. This is the agenda that we have to stop, and we have to be out there. We have to be there physically to do it, because it's not getting done. They're doing it physically, and they're getting it done. So we have to counter that and be physical, so we're going to do it. We need the help of people. I know there's people out there that do have money. Help us in our effort. There's people that are broke. Help us with your body. That's how you can help. Share the information that we put out there. Join the page. I've plastered it on all of my 300 groups. I know that Susan Price did. This is what it's going to take to make it go viral, so people can share the information while we still have the internet. We still have the power. We have the power. The people are more powerful than the people in power. And we have to realize that we have to empower ourselves and not feel hopeless. We can get it done, and we're going to have to.
We would be more than happy if you wanted to come speak at our Patriot Fest next year to have you.
Well, me and Susan, we are both speakers, and we'll be anywhere that you want us to be. But right now, we are focusing our efforts on stopping, or at least pushing back Jade Helm.
I understand. If you'd like to catch up on some of our information that we're handing out, like I said, our page is called The Outspoken Patriot. Please contact us. We would love to hear more from you. We have political speakers like Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, that have been following us and agree with everything that we're doing. We want to get the word out there. America needs a change.
Are you on my page?
Now.
Are you on my page, my Zeta Andrews page?
I believe I am.
Okay.
I just got several links today.
Okay, great. And just share all your information, and I will support any kind of effort that is going to free this nation so that we can get back living peaceful again.
Yes, I was trying to find the local radio station that you guys were on, but I couldn't find it. So then I got your page and got the phone number. I was wanting to listen to Susan Rice.
Yes, she's here. She's here, and
I was wanting to hear what she had to say earlier.
Go ahead.
I'm here. It's Susan Price, not to be confused with Susan Rice.
I apologize.
That's okay. I'm making a joke of it because she was such a joke. But yes, my friend.
But yeah, I was wanting to get your comments earlier. I didn't get the chance to hear you speak.
Well, we do have this archives, correct, Zeta?
Yes, you can always listen to the rerun on the website. It will come on automatically after the show.
Okay, great. Well, thank you.
And thank you for calling in. Did you find out from Beverly? Was it through Beverly?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Wonderful. Well, that's awesome. I'm on your page now.
Great.
All right. Well, folks, I have a bulletin. Okay. My daughter-in-law is pregnant, and I was just told as I'm on this radio program tonight that her water broke.
Oh, you're going to be a grandpa.
And I should be on my way to the hospital shortly.
Awesome.
So that'll be my 8th grandchild, and I'm looking forward. Little Landon, it's a boy.
All right,
I've got 6 granddaughters.
All right.
Well, Charles, I can catch you after, and I can talk to you tomorrow. And I know
I can speak a little bit with you because they asked me to wait for my son to call.
Okay.
So I have a few minutes until he calls, I'm sure.
But I would just like to say one thing before you close out the show, and I know you're going to close it out in prayer, and then I will do my Jewish prayer. But, if anybody can help us out, you can always go to the bottom of this page on PNN Talk Radio. There is a donation button. There's no amount too small. I don't care if it's $1. And then you could go to countermand.us and, contribute to the Countermand efforts as well. We're all tied together. We're all working for the same effort. And it will help our expenses on the road. We need a lot of help, and I know that God He's going to pave the way. I have no doubt in my mind that all these things will be provided for. And God bless everyone, and thank you. And we will see y'all tomorrow here at 8 o'clock. But go ahead.
Well, folks, this has been did someone... Okay, that must be an echo back to me. We're going to end the program. It's been an unusual program tonight. It's been one dealing with the subject of Jade Helm 15, mostly. We had covered many other issues at the same time. But we are asking you to do what you can to support the effort. I know that Zeta and Jim and Susan will be spending tremendous efforts over the next few months to try to get the governors to make a directive like the one that Governor Abbott had. But at the same time, the fact is that I will also be participating in working with the governors and encouraging them to bring the legislators into a session that will allow them to make a decision about the Countermand Amendment. So we want to get 34 state legislatures to approve it, and we're going to be working very hard with the governors to help us accomplish that. All right, now, as my custom is, I'm going to have a short prayer. I'm going to ask the Lord's blessing, and then I'll turn it back to Zeta, who can have a final prayer. Father, We do recognize you as the great God, the creator of the universe, the creator of America, the savior of our soul. We understand, Lord, that you have a purpose in everything, including the United States of America. And Lord, I'm not convinced, even a little bit, that your purposes have ended. I am convinced that you still have work for us to do as a nation and as a church and as patriots, and that this Constitution is critical in that it needs to be protected and used in a way that will honor you and honor your people at the same time. So we ask your help, we ask your resources, we ask your wisdom, we ask God for a cooperative spirit, we ask God that we would have all of the enabling that we need to get this incredible job done for the Countermand Amendment and also for the opposition to the Jade Helm's program, or I should say operations. So we ask that you would bless us and encourage us, and we ask it through your Son, Jesus. Amen. Go ahead, Zita. Close out.
Amen. And I play mine.
Amen.
Good night, everybody. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Jim. And thank
you, guys.
Bye-bye, y'all.
Thank you, listeners.
Thank you all.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu et derek, Yeshua b'Mashiach Yeshua. Amen.